everybody today. Great that you could join us. Really looking forward to this presentation that Paul Carpenter has very kindly put together for us for building high-performing teams. If I could, obviously we like these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So if I could ask you to put any questions that you may have during the presentation into the chat box, and then once Paul has finished presenting, then we can open up the session and answer those questions, and obviously take any other comments, and we welcome your own experiences and contribution to the session as well. So without further ado, if I could hand over to you, Paul. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Lois. Just checking then before we start. Can everybody see my screen? The opening slide. Is that clear, Lois?
Yeah. Yes, I can. Yes, it looks great from this perspective. Yeah.
Great. Thanks very much. Well, hi everyone, and thanks for joining this session. I hope it will be of value to you. Be about 25-30 minutes. That's all, and then I'll have some time for questions, and I think also some thoughts, bit of interaction afterwards about what people's thoughts are on this area. Just a little about myself. I qualified quite some years ago now as a FCMA accountant within a FTSE 100 manufacturing group, then moved into FD roles in engineering, into retail, travel, funerals, gaming, and then the last 13 years been very fortunate to work in biotech, in pharma. So I've been a pretty interesting range of sectors. In two of the FD roles I've had, progressed into general management as the MD, both times with a view to the companies being sold. Led teams of various shapes and sizes, sometimes internationally, up to 500 people. That was in general management role, typically finance teams up to around 50-60 people. I've tried in this session to try and capture some of my experiences, coupled with a bit of research, and also observations of what I've learned and seen from other people's experiences in trying to build a great team. So the themes I'd like to cover very generally, in no particular order, is, of course, why is having a great team, performing team important? And it's a pretty obvious question in that one. But then how can you get there? Avoiding some pitfalls, and I'll share a couple of mine along the way there. And I think lastly, how has COVID changed the rules? So to start with that, a bit of some of the more functional areas, really, talking about this, our goals and targets, are they necessary, and why are they necessary? Well, I think importantly, when you're starting with a team, it's important to make sure that everybody has an aligned purpose and can see their role within that team, and that how they fit together and how they complement each other, which is really important. We want to set clear expectations from day one within the team. It's more about the behavior patterns of things. Deadlines are deadlines. They're pretty clear. How people can support each other, how you might have overlapping roles for when people might be ill or off work or holidays. And things like email response time. Almost have a team charter if you want, if it works, because email response time within 24 hours might be absolutely adequate and fine for certain people. I've worked with for certain people that in the working hours of the day expect to reply within 20-30 minutes. So we will have had this different sort of dynamic. So it's good to know what people do expect and what can be expected of them. I think understanding the bigger picture as well, how this team, if it's a finance team, how this team fits into the larger organization and how it fits into the corporate picture. The corporate organization will have a goal, it will have targets to get to, and the goals that we set should be congruent within that to make sure that they're going in the right way. And what that then does for the team in having this part of being the bigger picture is really increases the motivation for individuals, the engagement, the productivity, and I think fulfillment. We all come to work. Yes, it's nice to get paid. We need to get paid. But it's really important that at the end of the day and at the end of each month, we go home fulfilled, thinking that we are part of something. We've had a real purpose. So once you've got your goals and targets obviously available, it's defining the requirements, really. What do you need from the team? And probably few of us will have great opportunity to be able to build a team absolutely from scratch. But we may take a smaller team in a growing business and think, how do we expand that, or how do we change it in a different environment? And getting the roles and skill sets established pretty early on, And then within that, the accurate job descriptions is really quite invaluable. I think a third area to look at as well, when you're looking at the skill sets, the accurate job descriptions and how you go about that, is what stage of development is your organization at, and what skills should be in-house versus external. And this doesn't have to be set in stone for years, but what it can mean is that, say, if you're in a smaller organization, it may make sense to use tax consultants externally for a period over time. And then when you get to a certain size, perhaps bring that sort of skill in-house. So it's not necessary to always have all the skills in-house, and to actually complement it with some external specialists as well. So once you've got the structure in place, the skills, the roles, and potentially the people, what's next? So I'd hope that most of you on the call would recognize this guy. He's not a bad player, really. A lot of people would say he's possibly the best player of all time, or certainly of the current era. But he's famed for being definitely a striker or an attacking midfielder, and his performance is legendary. But here he is in goal, and you wouldn't really choose to play him in goal. This was clearly when either somebody had been sent off or it was a training session. It took me a while to find the picture. But what you want to do is really utilize people's strengths to the maximum, and get to understand their strengths and weaknesses and talk to them about them. The weaknesses can be opportunities for development. And to understand what their levers are, what the people's interests are, what the drivers, the career goals. You may interpret your own ideas of where people want to go in their career, thinking they want to get to here, and actually they don't. They've got a different work-life balance idea, and embracing diversity across that gives us such a different breadth to any team, really, and complementary skills. And I think one thing to look out for as well is making sure that you don't always go for people like yourself. And that's one pitfall I learned out in probably my first FD role. I went for a financial controller who was a very good guy, bonded with immediately at the interview, similar likes, similar background. And I found really after 2 or 3 months that we really did all the same skills and the same job, and just at a different level. And we were leaving gaps, but we were also overlapping each other. Now, fortunately, in that organisation, it was growing, and we were able to complement it with other members of the team. But it was an oversight on my part to go for somebody really who was too much like myself. So it's important that you do think about the fullbacks and forwards that you need in the team and how they complement each other. I think the other thing I've put on this last point is make sure the team understand how each other behaves and what are their thinking patterns. And many of you might be familiar with things like insights, discovery. Is purpose, and is a person a red, a blue, a yellow, or a green? Many accountants' sort of main feature can be blue, which is more analytical, but not all the time. And to understand people's thinking patterns is good. And I'd encourage people to evaluate the team on this basis at an offsite, wherever, once a year or every 18 months. To refresh yourselves on how you behave with each other, how you can really work best with each other, and also with other teams also. And it's good for new members of the team to be welcomed in on that basis. Another point I think is particularly important, I think is great for the individual as well, is the recognition and motivation. And we should keep this on the radar at all times. And it's the first thing to forget when we're stressed. When we're under stress, it's not always easy to think, if we're under stress, but somebody in the team has done a terrific job, to actually make sure that they do get the pat on the back and they do get that recognition. And giving authentic recognition and showing real appreciation is incredibly important. I think there's certain instances when that'll be one-to-one, where you'd let the person know that that's the case. But there'll be other examples where you'd want to make other people aware that that individual has done a terrific role. One, so that they can feel a bit more proud and that other people have seen that recognition. But it can also be a motivator for the others as well, because they see somebody getting the pat on the back and getting that recognition, and they want to get themselves into that position also. So that can be quite a value. But in terms of thinking about doing this regularly, you've got to get the balance right, because if you tell somebody 3 times a day what an amazing job they've done and how fantastic it's the best piece of work you've ever seen, it will devalue the actual praise that you give them. So do think about how you give this and give it in the right place. And people can give recognition to others also. Some companies I've worked in have had recognition awards, but cross-functional, where people just put cards in a box. It'd be electronic now, where people just put a nomination forward for somebody who's helped them complete a form out or actually managed to set up a new supplier for them. And it creates quite a lot of interaction between the companies as that. So just having a rewards ceremony, perhaps, I say a ceremony, 20, 30 minutes, once a month, can be quite valuable. And perhaps the people that get drawn out of the hat get a £10 book voucher or something like that. It really can add a lot of value. So we've got the recognition of people, the team's in place, everyone's got the role portraits and they're quite clear. What do people need individually? Well, it's important that people can see a pathway forward for themselves. So if we can create an open landscape for people to develop at all levels within the team and of different skills, it's really, really important. And if you're in a large organization, you might have an L&D team, and please do engage with them, and often encourage your team to engage with them as well. They're often underutilized learning and development teams, and they do a lot of the pushing themselves to actually engage. And finance often are a team that is last to actually use what they have available and use the skills that they have available. Just because we work to deadlines, we're extremely busy. I don't say that we're always more busy than other teams, but it's not always as easy sometimes to find that time to do that. So please make time in your schedule to do that. And if you're in a smaller company, it doesn't have to be an L&D team. You know, you can, using coaching and mentoring from people within other functions and other departments can be equally important. I think the other thing to do as well is think about what's available online or from partners that you work with in business. If you're working with one of the big four accountancies or tier 2 accountancy practices, these guys often run workshops, not just on technical subjects, but about personal development and career development. And the amount of things that are out there online from LinkedIn, Microsoft, Apple, different things, lots of things that we can encourage people to do that in today's environment cost very, very little. So although that's in place, the people are being developed, how do you manage them? Well, the important thing is to not micromanage these people. These people want to do the best at their role and want to set within the guidelines that they've been given, should be allowed to flourish. So one of the bits of research I discovered looking at this was the American Psychological Association found that people who are micromanaged are 2/3 more likely to feel stress and tension. So that's not a great environment to be in. So whilst you want to actually make sure that obviously people are performing their role to the best of their ability, you want to encourage them to flourish and take risks, and reasonable risks. They've got to be measured. You don't want your group treasurer withdrawing all the bank funds and putting them on the 330 at Newmarket. But what you do want to do is give people the freedom and challenge to challenge existing processes, things that have been in place a long time. If you're expanding or your environment's changing, what should be changing in that environment? And just one example I picked from this was about 8-9 years ago, actually. I was in a business that was expanding and we had a lot of processing going on, a lot of people working in processing, and somebody brought up the idea of digital invoice scanning, which at the time was not very common at all. And we realized that to do this, you'd have to get your purchase order matching and goods received matching as well. So purchase orders had to be replaced for everything.
Sorry, you're breaking
there
up
was a lot of
slightly.
skepticism. There's quite a bit of... Sorry?
You were breaking up.
Oh, sorry. Is it?
It's all right.
Oh, sorry.
It's back now, but there was a couple
Is
of
it back now?
sentences.
I have to make sure there's no one else in the house on the Wi-Fi, but I don't think there is now. No, thanks. Please do interrupt me if it's a problem again, and I can make sure. So it's important, really, I think, with this, that the risks are taken. And when, as I mentioned, that digital invoice scanning, once it was a success in the UK, it was then rolled out across Europe and then ultimately globally within that business, and really did assist the business with its growth strategy. Next subject is about leadership, and I'm not going to go into leadership. The points I've just listed down, the 7, are more for observation than anything. The leadership is is a really big topic in its own right. But the important thing I think about leadership is that it comes with great responsibility, and it's easy in really good positive times to remain positive yourself and boost the team. But when you're in tough times and things are against you, it's even more important to remain positive and be a motivator. And getting that balance between positivity, optimism, and not being unrealistic. It's no good saying, yeah, run across this motorway, the cars will stop, honestly. It's being actually realistic about where the future vision is and making the best out of the position where you are. And the leadership is also, it's not about one person being the leader of the team. It's about developing leadership throughout the team, allowing other people to lead, stepping back a little and letting other people to lead in certain areas where they may have particular strengths. Customers. It's easy within finance when we're entrenched with deadlines, with producing P&Ls and monthly results and transaction processing, to forget a little bit about our customers and who they are. And we've got to think that really it's who's going to say that we are a high-performing team. It's not. It shouldn't be us. It should be our customers and the people that we work with. And while the obvious customer is the external customer, we think about internally, we obviously have maybe the group finance or a PE house or a shareholders, but we also need to think about the internal functions that we work with and how we are interacting with them. How often do we ask them what they need from us, and understand both on a team basis and also individually, are they getting what they need? It might be that you've got Brittany in sales, who spent 3 to 4 months trying to get her expenses through Concur. And she's asked twice, but she doesn't want to ask a third time. She's a bit embarrassed about it. And somebody in finance helps her with that. And that's the biggest thing on her radar really at the moment to get through, because it's quite difficult. She's getting regular emails each day. So think about that, talk to the customers and think about how could we go the extra mile, not to just give them what they want, but what could really, really improve that relationship. Obviously, the picture is an example of not so good customer behaviour, but I thought I'd throw that in. COVID. Now, this is a big one. And it's still very much ongoing, the fallout and impact from this. But when we think about what COVID did, I've been trying to really look into quite many areas of views on how much it accelerated virtual communication. But the sort of bias seems to be between 10 and 15 years. If we go back to the end of 2019, most of the virtual communication was done through WebEx, which tended to be a bit unreliable. Even with big presentations, it could sometimes be a bit nerve-wracking for the IT teams who were moving around. Some of us have used Zoom, some had used Teams, but not many people. And then all of a sudden, March 2020, we're all thrown into this. And then we're working from home, suits some people, doesn't suit others, and there's some in between. And one of the big factors that you can see, I think, that makes a difference to teams is having people's cameras on. And you look at the two examples on the right-hand side. Which call would you rather be on, the top one or the bottom one? And I think what's really invaluable is the body language that you get. You don't get the same body language on Teams as you do from being in a room with people, but you get an awful lot of facial leakage and body language that can come across from being on, having cameras on in Teams. So I would encourage people to have their cameras on as much as possible. It's always a bone of contention. And, there are certain people it doesn't suit as much as others. But if we went back 3 or 4 years, there wasn't a choice. We were in a room working with people. I'd also really encourage the face-to-face in time activity as well for people. If you're in an international role, Teams is an absolute godsend. It's amazing how we can communicate with people internationally, and you can't bring them into the office 3 days a week if they're in different countries. But if there is opportunity to get people in the office, please do. And if a policy is necessary, then establish a policy, but buy people into it probably rather than impose it. So you're trying to work for the majority and trying to give flexibility in there, because you've got to consider here different people's needs and how that works. So COVID is one, and very happy, I think, to discuss afterwards what people's views are in the questions session, because there's no right or wrong about this. We're all still learning. Finally, let's talk about culture. Culture's a really interesting one, and creating a culture within a team. How do you create a culture within a team? Well, you know, it's not a science really. There probably are people who would think it's a science, and you know, they might argue that, absolutely. But a good culture is just somewhere where you want to be. You want to be part of it, and you may have friends, colleagues who seem to have an amazing job in a workplace, but are still actually quite miserable really in what they do. They've got a brand new office, beautiful spick and span offices, free coffee and juices and gym memberships, child's on-site child cover, and they still are not in a happy environment, and something's off. And I think what you've got to look at, something's missing, a spark that can inspire them to truly love what they do and buy into what they do. And we need to inspire happiness, loyalty, health, greatness, really. And to make people feel that they're in an environment that is going to be great and is really having a positive purpose on their customers and other people is incredibly important. And a big factor of this is trust. And trust can be built up, whether it be face-to-face, whether it be on Teams, through any mechanism. Trust is built up over a period of time. There's a saying, trust comes in on the back of a tortoise, but it goes out on the back of a racehorse. And that's absolutely correct. If you lose trust, it goes very quickly sometimes, and it can take a long time to build back up. But it's an incredibly important part of culture. The other thing is socialize. Encourage your team to socialize. And I mentioned not everybody can get in an office every week. It might be an international team. But by having 2 or 3 Teams calls at certain times of the week, they don't have to be a long time. They could be 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I've seen companies operate just coffee mornings at 10 o'clock in the morning for their teams. Maybe flexible because not everybody can make 10 o'clock to 10:15 or 9 to 9:15. But when you can join, do join them. But make sure you have one meeting a week where you do encourage the whole team to join so that people can interact. And as well as talking about functional things on these meetings, if you have one on a Friday, you know, I know in COVID, many companies sort of have Friday afternoon drinks, 4 o'clock. People can drink whatever they like on the call. It's not going to make too much difference at 4 on a Friday, but it can create that environment. And if we're still operating on Teams now, you know, let's do that and understand what people are doing in their own lives as well. It gives really great value to that. The regular gatherings, whether it be Teams, whether it be live. And I think the final point to throw into this is team building, and the ability to get together with your team physically when possible is invaluable. And that might be once a year if you're in completely different locations. But if your company's having a conference, try and bolt on a morning or an afternoon either side of that. Have your own team building sessions. If you challenge something in a team building environment, it's amazing how people remember it 6 months, 12 months, 2-3 years down the line, and we'll talk about that team building and how enjoyable it was, what it did for people. And all these points, the most key factor of all these, I think, in culture is communication, and just keeping the communication going. Make sure you have regular interaction with all your team and other teams, and I'm sure you'll be a success. So enough from me. Thanks very much for your patience and taking you through that. I hope there's some things in there for everyone that might be of help. And I'd just like to move on to questions.
Thank you so much, Paul. Yeah, it was very interesting. I think the thing that really came out of that is virtual team building as well, and how over the last sort of 3 or 4 years our focus has had to change. And you know, a lot of the things that we would actually do face to face, we can now do online. And yeah, that I found that really interesting. So yes, what I would say is thank you very much, Paul. Really interesting, and yeah, a lot of detail in there. Thank you so much. And as most of you probably already know, that these sort of conversations can continue in the Guild app, which is a professional platform full of your peers, finance directors, CFOs, etc. and use to continue these conversations and raise other issues and ask for advice. And I think Christiane at the end of this will be emailing everybody with links to those other platforms that can offer lots of support, help and advice. So thank you all for joining today. Once again, thank you very much, Paul. And hopefully we'll see you all again soon. The December one is being brought forward. These are normally the last Wednesday of each month, but that's on the 13th. And will be, it's a non-presentation one, so it will be a standard virtual boardroom at which you can come and talk to your peers about sort of pressing topical issues at that point, should you be available. So thank you very much and bye-bye.